Alright, Tavo, say good morning. Let's begin a good Chodesh. Today's daf is Samech 60. We are picking up on the days 59b, and we are picking up 2, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom. Last word on the line. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So what Yitzchak Bar Yosef says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So remember again, still same discussion about illegal placement of shemen or levona on top of a mincha where it doesn't belong, and then the disqualifications of that particular mincha. So Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Nasan mashu shemen agabi kizayis mincha pasal. If a person puts even a little bit of shemen, a little bit of oil, on top of the kizayis of mincha, obviously we're talking about a situation where it's a type of mincha that doesn't get shemen, so a little bit of oil on top of a kizayis of a mincha, pasal. Ultimately, again, the mincha is pasal. My time, what's the reason? Lo yasim. Because mostly when it comes to the prohibition of placing illegal oil on a mincha, Torah uses lashon of lo yasim, you shall not place. Yasim, the Gemara darshans, sima kolduhu, any amount of placement, which teaches us that what? That halacha l'maisa, any amount of oil introduced into a mincha where it doesn't belong, has the ability to disqualify the mincha. Aleha, the pasuk says aleha, on it, ad de'ika shi'ura. The Gemara says, however, the shemen only disqualifies when it's placed aleha on the mincha. The Gemara understands aleha ultimately to be a lashon of chashivus, lashon of importance. Adiika shiura. You're only chayyeh for placing oil on the mincha if the mincha is significant. What's the basic unit of significance for a mincha? A kizayis. So we'll say, so interestingly enough, so any amount of oil will disqualify a mincha where it doesn't belong, as long as there is at least a kizayis of that mincha. Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Nosan kizayis levona agabi mashu mincha. We'll say, now listen to this case. If a person placed a kizayis of levona on top of even a little bit, a mashu of a mincha, what's talacha? Pasal. Ultimately, again, this will invalidate the mincha. My timer. Now, what's the reason for that? Because also, when it comes to levona, the Torah uses the lashon lo yitain. You shall not place. Lo yitain ksiv ad di'ika nesina. Ultimately, again, until you go ahead and you place until. So I say, see the difference over here. When it comes to shemen, the Torah uses lashon of sima, sam. When the Torah uses lashon of when the Torah uses that levona, it uses the lashon ultimately again of nesina. So the Gemara says nesina apparently is a more chashav lashon. Therefore, for levona, you only disqualify the mincha if you put a kizayis of levona. For shemen, on the other hand, because you use lashon of sima, even just a little bit of oil has the ability to disqualify the mincha. So the Gemara says aleha, but yet by levona, the Torah also uses lashon of aleha, and aleha we darshan before meant what? Meant the kizayis of mincha. So you're telling me then that by levona you need a kizayis of levona on a kizayis of mincha? No, the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Top of Samech, I will say, have ribui acha ribui. I will say this is one inclusionary phrase after one inclusionary phrase. So in other words, you have two back-to-back inclusionary, or maybe that is a better word for ribui than inclusionary, expansive, right? Two expansive words. So in other words, aleha, so sima teaches me ultimately again that it has to be a kizayis of levona. Aleha teaches me a kizayis of mincha. That's a riboy acha riboy, ve'in riboy acha riboy ela l'mayit. And I will say, in general, the exegetical principle we have is that when you have two back-to-back ribuyim, they actually come to exclude something. So what do the back-to-back ribuyim of sima and aleha teach me? Nesina and aleha teach me. It teaches me that halacha l'maisa, you need a kizayis of levona, but ultimately, again, that will disqualify even if it sits upon only a small amount of mincha. So we'll say in this first version of the Yimara, what we have is as follows. Any amount of oil will disqualify a mincha, provided that what? There's a kizayis of mincha. A kizayis of levona will disqualify what? Any amount of mincha. That's the version we have so far. Ikadami, there's another version. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef by Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say in this version, Rabbi Yochanan asks the following question. Nosan mashu shemen agabi kizayis mincha mahu. If you place a kizayis of shemen, if you place a little bit of shemen on a kizayis of mincha, what's the halacha? Mi ba'inon sima kinesina olo. Do we equate sima like nesina, which also means do we go ahead and equate the placement of shemen to the placement of lavona, just like lavona requires a kizayis, so too shemen requires a kizayis. Gemara will say in this case answers teku. So in this particular circumstance, the Gemara doesn't give a definitive answer. Rather, the Gemara just goes ahead and answers that as teku. So we'll say, so how do we paskin halacha lamaisa? So listen to this. So the first of all, going back to you know what? Let me finish the Mishnah first, then we'll do the halachas. So nasan shemen al shiareh. So let's remember again. The Mishnah said that if the kohen goes ahead and mixes in oil with the shirayim, with the leftovers of the mincha, then ultimately again the mincha is still kosher. Tan Rabbanan lo yosim aleha shemen v'lo yitain. You may not go ahead and place shemen on it. V'lo yitain yachol b'shnei kohanim. So we'll say I might have thought that this is talking about where it takes place with two kohanim. If you look at Rashi, yachol b'shnei kohanim lo yischayvu shnei lav and achu shnei kohanim echanos in shemen vechanos levona. We'll say let's say you have a mincha in which it was placed both shemen and levona. Talking about a mincha where it doesn't belong. So I might have thought the fact that it's phrased as two different verbs, lo yosim aleh shemen, but lo yitain aleh levona, I might have thought that you're only chayiv if it's done by two people. One kohen doing shemen, one kohen doing levona. To which the Gemara says, Talmud lomar aleha. Therefore the pasuk says, upon it, begufa shal mincha kosov medaber velo bekohen. Ultimately, again, the Torah is talking about the prohibition is phrased legabi the mincha and not legabi the kohen, which means I will say, enach inami, if you have two kohanim, one does shemen, one does levona, yes, they will each be chayiv once, but on the flip side, if you have one person and that person puts on both the shemen and levona, he will be chayiv what? He'll be chayiv twice. Yochel lo yitin kli al gabi kli vim nasan pasel. I might have thought that I also can't go ahead and even place a kli, a utensil of shemen, on top of another utensil with mincha. So we'll say in this case I want to be clear. The shemen is not being mixed or poured onto the mincha itself. Instead, there is a receptacle, there is a kli which is holding shemen, and that is placed on top of a kli that is holding the mincha. I might have thought that is possible. And I will say, now why in a million years would I think that's possible? Because remember, what's the lashon of the pasuk? What's the lashon? Aleha, on it. So maybe on it means even if there's not direct contact, right? Maybe it just means if one kli is resting on top of another kli, that also invalidates the mincha. To which the Gemara says, no, you're reading it wrong. Talmud lomar aleha begufa shal mincha hakasuv medaber. To which the Gemara says, no, aleha. So aleha actually means what? Aleha means the actual guf of the mincha. Oil will only invalidate the mincha if it is actually mixed in to the mincha itself, but putting a kli of oil on top of a kli of mincha will not go ahead and invalidate the mincha in any way. So we'll say just a few words of halacha l'maisa. This is the Rambam. This all appears in the Rambam Hilchos Psuli HaMukdashin, Parak Yud Aleph. So first of all, number one, minchas chodesh nasan ala shemen o ala komet shalon nifsala nasan ala levona yilaktena. So we'll say number one, Rambam paskins that if you introduce oil to a mincha that does not get oil, the mincha is automatically invalidated. If you introduce levona into a mincha which does not get levona, then what's the halacha rabosai? Easy remedy, which is collect it off. Collect it off. What happens, as you saw yesterday, haisa shchuka? What happens if it's ground levona? It's ground levona, now it's mixed in. So ultimately, again, the Rambam says harezeh psula misafek. He says it's possible safek, because remember again we had a machlokes in the Gemara as to ultimately again why the psul would be, but the Rambam says possible misafek for a very simple reason: shahari efshar lilakit, because you can't collect it. Whereas levona could be remedied because you could take it out. In this case, where you can't take it out, ultimately the mincha is going to be possible. Next, I will say. Okay, let me just get to that. Here we go. Nasan mashu shemen agabi kizais min mincha pasla. So pasla misafek. So I'll say the halacha is if you place even a little bit of shemen on a kizais of mincha, it passes the mincha. Avalim nasan shemen al pachos mikizais lo pasla. But if you place the oil on less than a kizais, it doesn't invalidate the mincha. Ve'ino aposa halavona ad shitein kizais levona. So we'll say, so Rambam essentially accepts the first version of our Gemara, that any amount of oil will invalidate the mincha, provided that's what? You have a kizais of mincha. Only time levona invalidates is if what? You have a kizais of levona, and a kizais of levona can invalidate even less than a kezayis of karban mincha. Good, that's the halacha l'maisa. Next, Mishnah. Yesh tu'unos hagasha ve'ein tu'unos tenufa. So we'll say now we come to two other parts of karban mincha. What are the two other parts of karban mincha? Hagasha and tu'una. And tenufa, excuse me. We'll say hagasha means the act of bringing the mincha in the kli sharis to the corner of the mizbeach. Which corner depends on the type of karban. Usually it's the southeastern corner of the mizbeach. So again, we won't get into caught up in directions right now because we'll get into that later on. But hagasha is you go ahead, southwest. So you go ahead and you bring the karban. That's hagasha. Before taking the kamitza, you go ahead and you bring the karban to the corner of the mizbeach. We'll say tenufa means the act of waving. Waving is going to look different ways for different menachos. So the Mishnah says over here as follows: Yesh tu'unos hagasha ve'in tu'unos tenufa. We'll say ultimately again there are some menachos which require hagasha but don't require tenufa. Ve'in tenufa. Hagasha utenufa. There are other karbanos, menachos, which require both hagasha and tenufa. Tenufa v'lo hagasha. Other menachos which require waving, but do not require bringing near hagasha. Lo tenufa v'lo hagasha. And then there are other menachos which do not require tenufa, nor do they require hagasha. Good. So let's go through the list. Ve'ilu te'unos hagasha, ve'in te'unos tenufa. And Rabbi say, here we go. Here is a list of the karbanos which require tenufa, which require hagasha, which means bringing near to the mizbeach, but do not require tenufa, do not require a waving requirement. I have no requirement. What are they? Will say. So again, remember, the first category, hagasha yes, tenufa no. Menachos hasolas. We'll say, as you already saw yesterday, menachos hasolas is the generic term for an otherwise undescribed karban mincha. A person says, Hari alai karban mincha, bring a karban mincha. Okay, as we're going to see, remember we haven't defined all the different categories, but there are many different types of menachos. So what type of mincha do you bring? If you say, I'm bringing a mincha upon myself, so ultimately again, minchas solas, a fine flour mincha. A fine flour mincha. So minchas solas, min hamachvas, marcheshes. So we'll say again, these are different types of minachos that are prepared in different ways. A deep dish mincha, a fried mincha, chalos, loaf mincha, rikikin, wafer mincha. Again, as I said in yesterday's daf, we're going to discuss each of these different categories of menachos. Minchas kohanim. So we'll say minchas kohanim refers ultimately to the special chavitin offering that a kohen brings on the day of his kohanic inauguration into service. Minchas Kohen Mashiach. We'll say that refers to the chavitin of the daily chavitin of the Kohen Gadol. Minchas Nochrim. If a Gentile, a Nochri, goes in and sends a mincha to the Beis HaMikdash. Minchas Noshim, a mincha brought by a woman, although we already saw in yesterday's daf that just means a regular mincha also, we'll discuss that. Minchas Chote, and a sinner's mincha. So let's remember again, what's the case of a sinner's mincha? For certain types of averos, you bring what's called a karban ola v'yored, which I will say means what? It's the type of karban which is determined by your financial status. If you could afford more, you bring more. If you could afford less, you bring less. The lowest, the most inexpensive karban on that sliding scale, karban ola v'yored, is what? Is what we call the minchas chote. A meal offering brought as a mincha. So we'll say, so all of these cases are situations where the mincha requires hagasha, a bringing near to the southwest corner of the Beis HaMikdash, and what? But does not require tenufa. All right. Next, Rabbi Shimon argues. He says, minchas kohanim u'minchas kohen Mashiach ein bahen hagasha. So Rabbi Shimon says that no, he disagrees also with two of the cases, which are minchas kohanim, minchas kohen Mashiach, which is, remember again, the minchas kohanim once again is a special chavitin offering, the mincha offering that a kohen brings when he is inaugurated into kohanic service. Minchas kohen Mashiach is a special chavitin that's brought on a daily basis by the kohen gadol. Rabbi Shimon posits these karbanos do not require hagasha. Why? Lefi she'ein bahen kamitza. Well, this is actually very interesting because there is no kamitza obligation by the minchas chavitin of the Kohen and by the minchas chavitin of the Kohen Gadol. We'll say, why is there no kmitza obligation? Because remember again, what happens to any mincha that a Kohen brings? It's fully burnt on the mizbeach. Remember again, I both say, under normal circumstances, the way a mincha, this is not true for all menachos, as we'll see, but the way most menachos work is, Kohen takes a kmitza, 3 fingerfuls of the mincha, that is burnt on the mizbeach. The rest is called shirayim, and what's the halacha with the shirayim? It's consumed by the kohanim. If, however, again, the Kohen is bringing his own mincha, they both say his own mincha is defined as a mincha that he, for our purposes now, as a mincha that he's bringing as a function of his duty in the Beis Hamikdash. He's the Kohen Gadol, so he's bringing it daily. He's a Kohen Hedyon, so he's bringing it for his inauguration. The mincha that a Kohen is bringing of his own mincha, there is no kimitza because there are no shirayim. That entire mincha is burnt on the mizbeach. Rabbi Shimon therefore posits, so we'll discuss where he gets this from. Rabbi Shimon says essentially the din of Hagasha. Rashi says, if you look at the end of the Mishnah, the Chol Shein Ban Kmitza Imam Hagasha. So Rabbi Shimon understands that there's a linkage between Kmitza and Hagasha. So just so you understand, the way that Hagasha normally works is, remember you have the mincha in a kli. The mincha is in a utensil. Before you take the Kmitza, you bring it over to the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. Then afterwards you bring it back and then you do the Kmitza. Rabbi Shimon says therefore that there's a linkage between Hagasha and Kmitza. If you don't have Kmitza, there is no din of Hagasha. Therefore again, the 2 karbanos of the Kohanim, the mincha of the regular Kohen, the mincha of the Kohen Hedyon, those karbanos do not have Kmitza, and therefore again no din of Hagasha. Where Rabbi Shimon learns this out from, we'll obviously see in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Amar Papa, so we'll say this actually is the same thing we had yesterday. Rabbi Papa says, Kol Heicha Disnan Eser Tenan. Rabbi Papa says, by the way, whenever we speak about Menachos, we're always speaking about 10 different categories of Menachos. So Mat Kamash Shvalan. So the Gemara says, okay, thank you, we can count. In other words, I got it, 10 different Menachos. To which the Gemara says, Mat Kamash Shvalan. So what is it ultimately that we're learning from this? La Fluk Mei Rabbi Shimon. Both say to exclude the position of Rabbi Shimon, because what does Rabbi Shimon say? Damar mechza chalas and mechza rikikin yavi. Let's remember again, we saw this yesterday, that Rabbi Shimon is of the opinion that when you bring a mincha, if you want to mix and match menachos, you have the ability to do that. So let's say one mincha, you want to bring half of it loaves and half of it wafers, Rabbi Shimon posits that you can. Rav Papa says, no, you can't. What's the raya to that? The raya to that is the Mishnah reckons the menachos as 10 separate entities. To teach you, you have a choice. You can bring so to speak, you can bring any one of the 10 that you want, but you cannot what? You cannot mix and match from the different menachos. Good. Says the Gemara. Menahani miri. So from where do we know this? So we'll say, now the Gemara is asking over here, from where do we know the concept of Hagasha? Where does this concept come from? So the Gemara says, the Tan Rabbanon, Ilu Ne'emar Vehevesa. So also listen to this. This passage they're quoting over here is by the Minchas Marcheshas. So I'll say, so the pasuk reads as follows: Vehevesa es hamincha asher ye'aseh me'ele laHashem. You shall go ahead and bring the mincha that you shall do me'ele from these to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ve'kriva lakoin. Thank you. Ve'kriva lakoin ve'gisha ala mizbeach. Well, so listen to this. So the pasuk says, Vehevesa asher ye'aseh me'ele laHashem ve'kriva alakoin ve'gisha. So the Gemara says, Hayisi Omer. Supposed to remember again, what do you have over here in this pasuk? You shall bring the mincha that you will do from these things to Hashem. You'll bring it to the kohen. Vehigisha el hamizbeach, and the kohen will bring it near to the mizbeach. So we'll say this is the pasuk that teaches us about the concept of hagasha. It is stated in the context of the minchas marchashas, which is a special type of mincha. But again, this is the din of hagasha. Vehigisha el hamizbeach. The kohen shall bring it near to the mizbeach. So watch this. So the Gemara says, Hayisi Omer. Hayisi Omer. Einli ela shetaon hagasha ela kometz bilvad mincha minayin. So let's listen to this. The Gemara says, I might have thought that what requires hagasha, Rabosai. See, I actually would have thought that what requires hagasha, the kmitza. See, the way I would have thought the karban mincha process works is, I bring the mincha to the kohen. the Kohen takes the Kemitza and he brings the Kemitza to the Mizbeach. How do I know that there's actually a din to bring the Mincha in its entirety in the Kli Shares to the Mizbeach? Mincha minayin, Talmud Lomar, Mincha. Pretty simple, I will say. What does the pasuk say? V'haveisa es hamincha. Meaning the subject over here of the pasuk is the mincha in its entirety. Therefore, later on when the pasuk says Vihigisha, you shall bring it near, bringing it near refers to what? Bringing it near refers to the mincha. Minchas choti minayin. So we'll say, so this is fine. Remember, so now I know that a minchas marcheshes has a din ultimately of what? Has a din of hagasha. Good. How do I know that it also applies to a minchas chote, to a sinner's mincha? Talmud Lomar, es ha-mincha. Because I will say again, the pasuk uses the lashon of es ha-mincha. Es is l'rabos. Es is a ribui. Es is an inclusionary word. So es ha-mincha comes to include additional types of menachos beyond the actual context in which this halacha is stated. So even though it's stated in the context of minchas marchashes, es ha-mincha comes to include minchas chote as well. V'dinhu, the Gemara says the truth is, I could even make a logical argument that minchas chote requires hagasha, even if I didn't have a pasuk. So we'll say, what's the logical argument? Ne'emar. So we'll say, if you look over here, the Mesoras Hashas changes the gears over here a little bit. He says, Ne'emar havei b'minchas chova, v'ne'emar havei b'minchas nedava. Torah uses the lashon of bring, havei, by minchas chova, and it uses the lashon of bring by minchas nedava. Turn the page. So the Gemara says, Ma minchas nedava, second line, Ma minchas nedava tu'una hagasha, just like a voluntary mincha requires hagasha, af minchas chova tu'una hagasha, so to an obligatory mincha requires hagasha. So we'll say, what's the obligatory mincha in question over here? Well, a good example of an obligatory mincha we'll say would be what? Would be a minchas chote. So therefore, again, the fact that it uses the same notion of havei, of bring, by minchas nedava, as it does by minchas chote, allows us to essentially create a halachic bridge between these two topics, to teach me that just as there is a din of hagasha, ultimately by a minchas nedava, there is also a din of hagasha by a minchas chova. Minchas chova in this case can mean a number of things, but for our purposes, minchas chote. But 1 second. Ma'ala minchas nedava shekin te'una shemen ulavona. 1 second. We'll say you can't necessarily learn out the halachos of a minchas chova from a minchas nedava. Why? Because minchas nedava has a unique aspect, which is what? It requires shemen and lavona, whereas many minchos chovos do not. For example, I will say a minchas chote comes with what? I will say, we saw this yesterday, comes with what? Nothing. There's no shemen, there's no lavona that is added into a minchas chote. So maybe I can't learn it out. Says the Gemara minchas sota tochiach. Well, I can learn it out from minchas sota. Why do I say? Because minchas sota doesn't have shemen, doesn't have lavona, but does what? Does require hagasha. To which the Gemara says, Mala minchas sota shekin tu'una tenufa. You can't bring a right from minchas sota. Why do I say? Because it requires tenufa. What's tenufa? Waving. Now again, we're going to get into all of this. We'll say, remember, just to understand what's happening over here. We learned out the din of hagasha. Ultimately, again, well, actually, let's finish this. Minchas nedava to yochiach. So we'll say, well, minchas nedava will show you that's what? That you have a situation, ultimately, again, you have a situation where the Torah used lashon of havei, and yet it also requires hagasha. But the problem is we can't compare it to minchas nedava, because as we just said before, minchas nedava requires shemen and lavona. To which the Gemara says, you're right. V'chazra din. We could keep doing this for hours, going in circles. Lo re'izeh k're'izeh, v'lo re'izeh k're'izeh. So we'll say you're right. Each of these items are not exactly similar to one another. Zeh tzad hashav shevahem. So we'll say ultimately again, what is the common denominator? Sheshavu l'kmitza, v'shavu l'hagasha. We both say the common denominator amongst all the items named is what? They all have a din of kamitza, and they also all have a din of hagasha. Therefore, I will say what I could make the logical argument to say what? Af ani avi minchas chote sheshave lahen l'kamitza tishva lahen l'hagasha. So we'll say therefore I could say, you know what? Minchas chote also possesses that same common characteristic, namely it requires kamitza. Once it requires kamitza, I could also say that what? That it requires hagasha. So I'll say, just so you understand what we're just trying to do over here, we learn out the concept or the obligation of hagasha in a very specific context of a minchas marcheshes. We're just trying to figure out, how do I know that the din of hagasha applies to other types of menachos? So the Gemara says, simple, it's a drasha. The Torah doesn't say mincha. The Torah says es ha-mincha. Es ha-mincha is an inclusionary phrase that comes to include other types of menachos as well. To which the Gemara says, by the way, even without a pasuk, I could have learned out that a minchas chote, for example, requires hagasha through this we'll call mahatzad, through this ultimately again common denominator concept. To which the Gemara said, but 1 second, malatad hashava shebahen shekin huchshiru lava ba'asher kibani. We'll say maybe not. Maybe the common denominator amongst all these other menachos that we've been discussing is that they are the same whether you are rich or poor, right? For richer or for poorer, these menachos are the same. Yet, that's not the case by minchas chote. Tomar b'minchas chote shelo huchshira lavo ba'asher kibani. But when it comes to minchas chote, the halacha is what? It is not the same if it's brought with an ashir than if it's brought with an ani. Talmud lomar es ha-mincha. Did also we come full circle and say, you're right. Where do we learn out that there is a din of hagasha by a minchas chote, not from a ma'atzad, not from common denominators, but rather, again, from es ha-mincha. Ultimately, also we dash in the pasuk, es ha-mincha comes to include other additional menachos in the din of hagasha. Good. Rabbi Shimon says, v'hevesa. The pasuk says, v'hevesa, and you shall bring. Rabbi say this is the same pasuk we just quoted before. V'hevesa samincha sheyasa me'ila la'Hashem v'kriva la'koin v'yigisha la'mizbeach. So remember, this is the pasuk by hagasha, the pasuk by minchas marcheshes. So Rabbi Shimon says as follows. So Rabbi Shimon says as follows. Rabbi Shimon Omer, ve'hevesa, l'rabos minchas omer lahagasha. Rabbi Shimon says the word ve'hevesa, you shall bring, comes to include what? Comes to include the minchas omer for hagasha. They both say the minchas omer has to be brought to the southwest corner of the mizbeach. V'chinu omer, they both say, and similarly it says, ve'hevesem es reishis ketzirchem el hakohen. So both listen to this. So what Rabbi Shimon is picking up on is as follows, that it uses the word ve'hevesa in this pasuk that talks about hagasha, and it uses the word vehevesa in the pasuk by karban omer. What do we learn from here? We learn from here that halacha l'maisa, the minchas omer requires hagasha as well. Next, vikriva. So say from the word hikriva in the pasuk by hagasha, l'rabos minchasot hagasha. So remember, all we're doing now is we are dissecting this pasuk. And by dissecting this pasuk, we're seeing how every different type of karban mincha is subject to the law of hagasha. I shouldn't say that. Not every type of mincha. That was the Mishnah. Certain minachos have a hagasha requirement. So hikriva. So what says that the pasuk says you shall bring it near the rabos minchas sota lahagasha. This comes to include the mincha of the sota. Mincha sota must be brought to the southwest corner of the mizbeach. V'chinu omer v'hikriv osa el hamizbeach. Because I will say again, in the context of sota, the Torah also uses this lashon of hakrava. V'dinhum. So the Gemara says the truth is, even without these psukim, I could have ultimately again learned out that minchas sota requires hagasha. How can I learn out that minchas sota requires hagasha even without the pasuk? Get ready for this. Uma minchas chote she'ina tu'una tenufa tuna hagasha. Bosa minchas chote, which doesn't require waving, requires hagasha. Minchas sota she'tu'una tenufa eino din she'tu'una hagasha. Bosa therefore minchas sote, which does require tenufa, does require waving, certainly should require hagasha. To which the Gemara says, 1 second. Mala minchas chote shekin ba'a chitin. So I'll say, but 1 second, there's a big difference. Minchas chote comes from wheat, right? Minchas sota, we'll say, comes from what? One of the unique carbonos that comes from barley. It's an inferior grade carbon. To which the Gemara says, no. Minchas ha'omer tochiach. I will say the minchas ha'omer will prove that wrong, because minchas ha'omer also comes from barley, right? And yet again there is a din of hagasha. Mala minchas ha'omer shekin tu'una shemen ulavona. We'll say Minchas Omer is different. Why? Because it requires Shemen and Levona. So it has that unique aspect. Minchas Chote Tochia. So we'll say Minchas Chote will prove this. Minchas will prove what? Minchas Chote, we'll say, does not have a requirement of Shemen and Levona, but yet does have an obligation of Hagasha. We'll say, to which we say, the Chazar Adin. Chazar will say means we keep going around in circles. And finally, we're forced to say, Lo Re'izeh K'Re'izeh, but Lo Re'izeh K'Re'izeh. But at the end of the day, these items are truly dissimilar. Yet, but there is a common denominator, which is what? Sheshavu l'kmitza v'shavu l'hagasha. The common denominator, is that they all have a kmitza requirement and they all have a hagasha requirement, which seems to say that wherever there is a kmitza requirement, there is automatically a hagasha requirement as well. Af ani avi minchas sota sheshav salan l'kmitza. Tishva lahen lahagasha. So too I will include minchas sota. Since there is a kmitza requirement, there will also be a hagasha requirement. So also all we're trying to do over here is try to say I can learn out the hagasha requirement of sota even without a drasha of a pasuk. I could simply learn it out based on the common denominators we established. To which well, maybe not. Malat arashava shabahen shekein lohochsharu lavo kemach. Tomar minchas sota shochsharu lavo kemach. So here's another distinction. Maybe the common denominator among those other menachos that we were discussing is that they cannot come kemach. I will say kemach means coarse flour, as opposed to soles, which is fine flour. So I'll say under normal circumstances, the halacha is you do not bring a korban from kemach. There's an exception to this rule, which is what? Which is korban, which is minchas sota. Minchas sota does come coarse flour. To which the Gemara says, Tamalom or Vehikriva, you're right. Therefore we'll say we learn out, in fact, bottom line is, there is an obligation of Hagasha by the Minchas Sota, but where do we learn it out from? Rabbi said we learn it out from the word Vehikriva. It says over here in the Pasuk by Hagasha, Vehikriva, and it says by Minchas Sota, Vehikriva Osa, teaching me that Halacha Lamaisa, Minchas Sota requires Hagasha. Good. Rabbi Hudomer, Vevesa, L'Rabos Minchas Sota L'Hagasha. Rabbi Huda has a little bit of a different interpretation. He says the word vehevesa teaches me that minchas sota requires hagasha. V'cheinu omer vehevi es karbana aleha. Because also the pasuk by sota says, and he shall go ahead and bring karbano aleha. He shall bring the karban. So use lashon of hevi by sota. Uses lashon of hevi by the pasuk of hagasha. Teach me that minchas sota requires hagasha. Aval minchas omer lo tzricha kra. Rabbi Huda says the Minchas Omer does not require a pasuk. Does not require a pasuk. Why not? My taima midina kasya, because it will say Minchas Omer that I can learn out. It will say dina normally means like a kal v'chomer. In this context, what it really means is a logical argument or a logical approach. How so? Uma Minchas chote sheina tuna tenufa. Tuna hagasha, minchas chote, which doesn't require tenufa waving, requires hagasha. Minchas haomer shetuuna tenufa, eno din shetuna hagasha. Then the minchas haomer will say, which does require waving, certainly it will require hagasha as well. To which the Gemara says, well, not necessarily. Mala minchas chote shekein ba'achitin. Ultimately, again, the minchas chote comes from wheat, as opposed to the minchas haomer, which will say comes from what? Comes from barley. To which the Gemara says, Minchas Sota Tochiach. So Minchas Sota will prove that incorrect, because Minchas Sota comes from barley, yet what? Still has a Hagasha obligation. Mala Minchas Sota Shekin Ba'a Levarer Avon. So the Maskeres Avon he will say ultimately again, Minchas Sota is what the Gemara suggests here is that Minchas Sota will say is really like a little bit of a carbonic outlier. Because Minchas Sota is a unique carbon that comes to establish guilt, or to maybe to discern a person's guilt or not. It's a guilt qualifier, right? Are you guilty? Are you not guilty? Demaskeres avoni minchas chote tochiach. Ultimately, to which the Gemara says we can learn from minchas chote. To which the Gemara says no. Chazra adin lo rizikri zeh v'lo rizikri zeh. It turns out we'll say that these items are really dissimilar, but yet there is a commonality. Shekin shavu l'kmitza v'shavu l'hagasha. Chamnani will say is they all have a din kmitza and all of din have hagasha. Therefore, again, I can make the logical argument that these two concepts should be linked, and therefore, whoever has a din of kmitza should have a din of hagasha. Af ani avi minchas haomer sheshav salahan l'kmitza Tishva lahem lahagasha. So too again, I will include Minchas HaOmer. I will say just like Minchas HaOmer has a din of kamitza, therefore what? It also has a din of hagasha. Umay parachta. The Gemara says, and what possible pircha? What question could you possibly ask on this? To which the Gemara says, Reb Shem parachachi. Reb Shem says, I'll tell you what question you can ask on this, as follows: Ma lahatzada shava shebahen shekein mitsuyin. But say this is actually very interesting. I can say the following: that you know what's different. Minchas chote, minchasot rabosai are different than Minchas HaOmer. Why? Because rabosai they're common. Mitsuyin means they occur often. They occur often. Minchas chote, minchasota, mamish like these. Okay, yeah. It happens, right? It's common. It's common. To which the Gemara says, no. Actually, you're fundamentally wrong. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda adrabba ha mitsuya tfei hanach zimnin delo mishkachas leklal. So if everybody Rabbi Yehuda says you're absolutely wrong. Minchas HaOmer is actually more frequent than minchas chote, minchas sota. Why? Why I will say? Because one thing is clear, which is Minchas HaOmer is guaranteed to happen once a year. We'll say, can you have a situation where there's never a Minchas Chote, never a Minchas Sota? I mean, again, it would be improbable. It would be improbable, but it's certainly possible. So you could have a situation, ultimately, again, where those two karbanos never occur. One could never say such a thing when it comes ultimately, again, to Minchas HaOmer. Good. So the Gemara says, O Eino Omer, ve'havesa ela shiyachid misnadev u'mevi mincha acheres chutz meilu. Supposed to listen to this. So I will say now, the Gemara switches gears for just a moment, focusing on the other part of the Braisa. O Eino Omer, ve'havesa, maybe when the pasuk says ve'havesa, ela shiyachid misnadev u'mevi mincha acheres chutz meilu shebe'inyan. But say, I might have thought maybe ve'havesa means you could bring whatever kind of mincha you want. Ours, even if there's, we spoke about 10 categories of menachos, maybe the yachid has the ability to go ahead and bring something different. V'dinu, the Gemara says, tzibor maybe mincha menachitin chova, or maybe mincha menasorin chova. So also remember again, the tzibor brings a carbon mincha from chitin chova, or the obligatory congregational mincha offerings are brought from wheat. And ultimately, again, umevi mincha minas orin chova, and they also bring an obligatory offering, i.e., the omer from barley. Af yochid shemevi mincha minachitin nedava, yochol yavi mincha minas orin nedava. I might have thought therefore I will say the individual who also, when he brings his obligatory menachos, they are brought from what? They're brought from grain, from wheat. I might have thought that he could bring a minchas sa'orin, a nedava, a barley mincha as a nedava offering. Talmud lomar eila. Ainli ella ela. So we'll say ultimately again the pasuk says ela. There are a range of menachos. But I will say the menachos are the range is limited to what? To that which is explicitly stated in the Torah. So the Gemara says, O eina omer ela ella la omer hare alai mincha shemevi chamishtan. I will say maybe you would think following. Maybe ela means like this. That if you go ahead and you say I'm going to bring a carbon mincha, you have to bring of the 5 types mentioned in the pasuk. Rashi says Hare alai mincha stam shemevi kol elech hamishta bal karcho. Maybe I will say if I say Hare alai mincha, maybe mincha means I have to bring all the 5 types of menachos, in other words, that apply to a yachid. Talmud lomar me'ela. Therefore I will say the pasuk says no. When you take upon yourself to bring a carbon mincha, me'ela, it's from amongst these. Ratza achas maybe, ratza chamishta maybe. If you want to bring 1, you could bring 1. If you want to bring 5, you could bring 5. But that is up to your discretion. Rabbi Shimon Omer, es hamincha l'rabos shar menachos. So we'll say Rabbi Shimon says that the phrase es hamincha, v'havesa es hamincha comes to include other types of menachos in the hagasha obligation. What other types of menachos? Kigon minchas nachrim, a mincha offered up by a Gentile, minchas noshim, or menachos brought by women, lahagasha, that these menachos also have a hagasha obligation. I might have thought that therefore I should also include the shtei halechem, which we'll say are the 2 loaves offered by Shavuos, and lechem aponim, which are the breads placed on the shulchan. So let's remember again, this goes back to yesterday's daf, that we were introduced to this very novel idea that apparently lechem haponim is treated like a carbon mincha, which is an incredibly unique and novel idea. So I might have thought Shtei Lechem Lechem Aparim are also subject to the Hagasha obligation. Talmud Lomar Me'ele. Therefore, both say the pasuk says from amongst these. From amongst these, not all menachos are subject to the Hagasha obligation. Only some of them. Umar Ra'is L'Rabos Shamenachos. So why is it Rabbi say that you include, let's say, the mincha of Nachrim or the mincha of Noshim, but you exclude Shtei Halechem and Lechem Aponim? So Mar Bani Shamenachos Sheyesh Mehen Leishim. We'll say I include other types of menachos. Why? Because ultimately, again, the komets of those menachos are burnt. The komets of a minchas Nachrim, the komets of a minchas Noshim is burnt. But I will exclude ultimately again Shtei Halechem and Lechem Aponim, which what? Have no kamitza, which is burnt on the Mizbeach. And therefore, it's going back to what we were saying before. We see this linkage between kamitza and Hagasha, which was Rabbi Shimon's statement in the Mishnah. So Shtei Halechem, Lechem Aponim, which have no kamitza, therefore again also have no Hagasha. I says what this will start with. V'halo minchas nesachim kula liishim. But 1 second. Minchas Nesach Rabbi says totally burnt on the fire. Yochol Yehei Tu'una Hagasha. So we'll say Minchas Nesachim, which doesn't have a Kamitza, it's totally burnt on the Mizbeach. I might have thought that what? I might have thought that Halacha L'Maisa, it requires Hagasha as well. Talmud Lomar V'hikriva. So ultimately, again, the Gemara says V'hikriva, you shall offer it. Which we'll say the Gemara seems to understand. You will offer it. If you look at Rashi, well, actually, before we get to Rashi, Vahav fixing, but we already used V'hikriva to teach me something different. To which the Gemara says V'hikriv V'hikriva. The pasuk could have just said V'hikriv. Instead, it says the elongated form of V'hikriva, which comes to include something and exclude something else. It's coming to include that which we spoke about before, and it's coming to exclude ultimately again the minchas nesachim from the obligation of Hagasha. All right, so we'll stop over here. We will continue with the Hagasha discussion tomorrow.